Good.
Okay, this lesson is exterior walls, lesson 9. Let's start off with that first paragraph on 113. As a home inspector, you will have to visually inspect the exterior walls of the house. This includes wall cladding, flashing trim around the doors, etc. The main function of wall cladding is to protect the interior of the house from the elements of weather. So this is a pretty straightforward report. Just like in roof coverings, does it really matter what your siding covering is? You have specific defects for the type of covering. You have chinking and logs. You have denting and paint fading off of it on aluminum. You have wood that's peeling paint, and you have vinyl that's oil canning. And other than that, you have separation. So the material itself doesn't matter. All that really matters is it performing its job? And we're looking at its job is to protect the interior from water. Home inspectors shall observe and report on all exterior walls and coverings, all exterior doors, including garage doors, all attached or adjacent decks or balconies, all eaves, soffits, and fascia. We do not inspect fences, number 2, or we're not required to observe and report on the following fences. I disagree with this also. Anybody want to tell me when I would inspect a fence?
When it's attached to the house?
Thank you. I know, he's got 2 things right tonight. He's on top of his game. 2. When it's attached to the house. If it's stopping me from getting into the backyard, if I can't walk completely around the house, I'm reporting on it. And it's just the material and the condition. Unless there's a pool involved, I don't even care whether the gates work or not. I'm not there for security purposes. I'm looking at the condition and the material of the fence, I'm putting it in the report, etc. If it's a fence bordering the property or around the property, but I can walk around the house, then that's when I don't do the inspection on a fence. Recreational facilities. We are not required to do outbuildings other than garages or carports. I kind of disagree with this in general. If you have on your MLS a farmhouse that has three barns, guess what's valued more than the house? The 3 barns. They've got livestock there, probably horses, and or donkeys, and or cows, whatever. Who cares? When you're doing a farm, just remember those barns are probably more important to the people than the house. I've done a lot of farms that had livestock in barns, and they would walk around my every move around the barn, but they didn't even bother to come inside when I'm inspecting the house. They just don't care. So those and I'm not talking about farmers, I'm talking about people that own livestock. Those barns are very important to them. So do not inspect outbuildings. Unless, outbuildings if they're barns. You do not want to skip that. Now, I don't do every shed I have to, and if my client says, hey, did you look at the shed? I say, you want me to? And he says, yeah. I'll go out there, I'll take a picture of it, I look inside. Is it standing, and is it going to fall, and is it watertight? Other than that, I don't care. And other than that, he doesn't care. He just wants to see, he wants to make sure he gets my full service, I guess, I don't know. So, types of wall coverings: aluminum, vinyl, wood, brick, stone, stucco, asbestos, cement, and insul brick. Performing an exterior wall inspection. This section will discuss how to perform an inspection similar to less than 8 roofs. As a new home inspector, you begin inspecting the house so you do not overlook an area. Right corner of the garage, you want to walk around the whole thing. You're looking for defects, the same things we were looking in the roof. Or anytime we're looking for standards, safety, operation, and condition. Let's go to page 118, the checklist for the worksheet for exterior walls. Again, remember, the checklist is a guide. my wall structure, is it concrete or a wood frame or masonry or log? Wall covering material. Remember, when I'm looking at it, I'm looking at all of it, not just to identify what kind of material it is. I have to look at the whole thing. This is a guide. And then the trim. When we get into the trim, that's where it gets interesting, because in my mind, the important thing about siding of a house is the penetrations, the opening of the envelope. You have windows and you have doors. And then around the doors, you have decks and you have porches. That's where things kind of go astray. My deck may be at a negative slope, and right underneath that door, the wood started to rot out because the snow lays up there and the rain pours up there. That's what I'm looking for. Around the door, I'm looking at the trim. Around the windows, I'm looking at the trim. Because if there's anything wrong going to happen, it's going to happen around the penetration, typically. I don't hardly ever see a defect on a solid wall. But give me a wall with a window and I find defects. Give me a wall with a door and I find defects. Give me a wall with a deck, I find defects. But a wall all by itself? Hardly. Okay? So that every time you have some kind of penetration, look at that window. Windows can be installed improperly. I've had guys that know their windows so well they can walk up and just by looking at the trim from 3 foot away, they knew that the window was installed improperly. So there's ways of determining that. Where I find out where it's installed improperly is when I'm inside the house and I take a moisture meter underneath those windows. Because there's one thing all windows do if they're installed improperly. Water penetrates. And if water penetrates, it doesn't come in and go up, it comes in and goes down. So if you're inspecting the windows on the interior, don't look above the window, look under the window. When I find the moisture penetrate, when I find wet spots around the window, here's the window, the moisture is coming down here. And underneath this is the area I'm going to put my moisture meter on. If I put my moisture meter at these 3 spots, these are the spots that are going to be wet if there's an issue. It comes down those sides typically, and it gets underneath it. Sometimes I'll find the whole thing wet, but that's probably has more to do with time. But these corners are where every time I look for moisture, I find moisture, if it's an improperly installed window, will be on these corners. Moisture meters are not standard. They are standard. What they aren't is they aren't the minimum tool you need. That's a little bit extra. I would suggest a moisture meter be after you buy your ladder and after you buy your GFCI and after you get your flashlight and after you get your camera. The next step up would be your moisture meter. Because when you see stains on the interior or exterior, that moisture meter is going to tell you whether it's active or not, because they could be old. Okay? Let's go back to talking about those windows. Different sidings, these are on page 115 are the list of different types of sidings, etc. Doors, here's a page on the doors and then names of all the different things that you're looking at. Does the door operate? Look around at the trim, look under at the bottom of it to see if there's any rotted wood. Windows, exactly the same thing. And then here's our high efficiency piping thing under windows. Should be less than 3 foot from the gas meter. Here, general practice. Now this is general practice about that high efficiency piping. Inlet pipe, discharge pipe should be 4 foot from a soffit, 3 foot from the gas meter, should be at 1.5 foot from ground, should be 7 foot from a walkway. It's just all baloney. I don't go around measuring anything. Those are standards. Look to see if it looks like it's a problem. That's one thing about, I've always believed most homeowners know what a house looks like. Most homeowners know everything that they need to know from a building science point of view. there's some things that they learn, but they also know what a house should look like and what, I mean, they've been living in one for 40 years or 50 years. They know what's right and what's wrong. And if you know what's right or wrong and you're a home inspector, you're writing up what's wrong and you keep walking around till you've got a list of all the wrong things. It's pretty simple. Now, we bury it in the language that makes us sound professional, and we have standards, but in general, you're taking your experience of doing the job, doing all the observations you've done your whole life, you're taking an experience and you're giving it a formula, and you're making money with it. But all it is you're more experienced on how houses should work. Because when we turn on a furnace and it doesn't turn on, guess what we do? Doesn't turn on, it's not operating. I might go and touch one thing. I might go turn on the emergency switch, flip it, see if maybe it's in the off position. That's it. So if furnace doesn't come on, now any homeowner can do that. Okay? So what we're doing as home inspectors is not rocket science. We've just applied a system to doing what everybody already knows. You're learning a system of how to look at a house in all of its elements, at the thousands of things that could be wrong, and we're learning a system to go through and look at it in a logical, orderly manner, and then write it up in a logical, orderly manner, in a manner that allows the layman to understand what we're talking about. That's all the school's about. Huh? You already know everything you need to know. We may teach you something about electrical you didn't know, but other than that. So windows and doors and siding, you know, walk around, test it, try it. There's just not too much to this chapter. Yes.
This
Thank
happened-
God, a question.
Question. This happened to me in a house I just bought a couple years ago. They built, so the house was sided, it was vinyl sided, and they built a brick staircase right up against the siding. So they just, like, brick, you know, I pointed this right to the siding. And,
Kind of a parge coat sealing it between the house and the side.
there was just cement, it was just built right next to the house.
Yeah,
Up in the
but
house.
was it joined? Did they put a parge coat over it so it looked like a seal? Or was it just setting up next to it?
Just set it right up next to it.
Okay, as close
They
as
put
they
a-
could get it.
It was touching it. It was, so they put a block, square on the bottom, they filled it with gravel, they topped it with a slab, they put some stairs on it, and brick faced
Right.
it, right next to the house.
Right.
So, 20 years, the water sat
It
there,
deteriorated and it sagged, it started
Right.
sinking.
not sinking, but it rotted the side of my house. The
Oh.
fascia board and the
Yeah.
silk plate, all that chairs underneath the door,
Yeah,
it was rotted.
yeah.
So was that the construction of that would be something to point out or not?
No, we don't do construction.
Like that being such a faulty,
You can walk around and talk about that if you want to your client. Wow, I don't like that. But where's my defect? Before that wood rotted, what you're suggesting to me is you knew that, you knew after the fact that it had a problem. But before the fact, did you know it was a problem?
I didn't know.
Okay. So what I'm saying is we don't write on something that we wouldn't build it that way. We write on something that we see that's wrong. The rotted wood was wrong. Prior to the rotted wood, I can't talk about it. Just because I wouldn't build it that way doesn't make it wrong. It's just not the way you would do it. When we get into the judgment of how somebody builds something, that's a slippery slope.
Okay.
Do you really want somebody sitting up above saying that, well, you built it wrong, you built it right, wait, it's Thursday, no, you built it wrong. Now, when's his judgment ever stop? It's continually changing. Now, you get a new administrator in there, and that guy tells you, oh, what he said 3 years ago is wrong, now it's his way. You can't have that. It's either wrong and it's deteriorated, or it's right. So, you have wood, good wood, it's moved up there, it's close, it's safe, it's not moving, nothing's wrong with it. It just is going to lead to rot 10 years from now. But until it's rot, you can't say anything. Now, I can tell him, my client, that it may rot in the future, but you can't put it in the report. You can't make a defect out of what may happen.
Like my home inspector couldn't see it was rotted,
Right.
so he didn't report on it. That's,
Should it have been different? Did you want him to move the porch out of the way? And if I move the porch out of the way, who's to say I shouldn't have taken off a couple foot of siding just to see over a little bit more?
right.
And if I look over 2 foot more, who's to say I shouldn't have looked over 2 foot more? And then if I look over 4 foot, who's to say I look over 6 foot? And then you get a new guy in charge of home inspecting industry, and he says you gotta look 8 foot. Where does it stop? They don't ever back up from that. You know, government regulations, they only get worse.
Okay.
So, it's either broken or it's not. Just because you wouldn't do it that way, and you know what's going to happen, doesn't matter. If I walk onto a deck, and those stairs are solid, and I get on the deck, I give it the Dan Osborne test. I jump up and down, take my 200 pounds, and I plop down on it. If that sucker doesn't move, I walk over to the corner, where my mitered corner is, on the handrail. You understand what I'm talking about? If this is flush, that's the way he probably installed it, and that's the same way it is today. Has that moved since the day he built it? No. If it's not flush, back to what I was saying earlier, did he walk away from that mitered joint? You know, on a deck, when you walk around the deck, you get to the corner, and there's that mitered corner.
Right.
I look at those. And if it's separating, then I know my deck moved. Sometime since the day it was built. I'm writing it up. Do I know that it was yesterday, or do I know it was 20 years from now, or is there no way to know? So I have to write it up. Does that make sense? But if I have a tight mitered corner, and this is pressed right up against the siding of the house, and there's no gap there, and I jump up and down and there's no wiggle, do I really freaking care how he built that house? Or that deck? It's 25 years old and hasn't moved an inch. Who am I to say he did it wrong? Huh? Find the defect, then write it up. Until you find something wrong. I don't write up gutters. I don't. If I have a two-family house with a basement, I go to the extent. I know Joe would disagree with this. If I have a two-family house in Troy, no, in Schenectady, with all the wet basements, and there are no gutters on this house, and I go into the basement, and that gutter basement is solid dry, and it's been there for 40 years. Am I going to write up no gutters as a defect? No, I'm not. You would.
Why would I?
Oh, I don't know. I thought you would.
No.
I thought you were a no gutter guy.
No, there has to be a reason why they have gutters.
And if that reason isn't there yet, I'm not
And
writing
I'm
it
not
up.
gonna write up gutters, because that's a waste of a lot of money. If they decide to.
So the bottom line is you'll hear me say it for the next 4 months, and you're going to hear Joe say it for the next 10 years. When are you retiring? Probably never from this.
It all depends. We might be traveling soon.
Oh,
In a
stop.
few more months, or a few more years.
Stop. All we ever say is show me the defect, then I write it up. Show me the negative. So just because it's not the way you would have done it, just because
There's
Yeah,
a sign,
9
you
years
see
of
something,
retire.
and you say, oh, look, there's
you show me
causing something,
something's causing it.
something's
And I'm
causing.
not going to, like William would suggest, give him a reason why, or was it you that said, give me, that we have to explain why it's doing it. We don't have to explain why. If I see a separation in this joint, I'm writing the deck up.
Okay.
If I see wet basement, I don't care if there's gutters or not. If I got a wet basement, I'm writing something up. And if I don't have a wet basement, I'm not writing no gutters up. Because there may be an underground drainage system that this contractor put in that was experimental. Who knows? Water's not getting in the basement, we're all good. Okay? Anything else? Any questions in general? Yes?
The asbestos tile thing, do you have any?
Excellent question. Thank you for reminding me of that. Yeah, I have a feeling about it. Is asbestos bad?
No.
No, it's not. Very good. You're the first person I've ever asked that question to that said no. Why?
It has to be friable to be.
Ooh, you've had some training. Yes?
A little bit,
If it's friable, I'm writing it up.
right.
If it's not friable, I'm not. There's asbestos in that wallpaper there. I don't see anybody here tearing it out. It's not friable. Asbestos is not the enemy. Friable asbestos is. Proper treatment of friable asbestos is either encapsulation or removal. Couldn't be any easier.
So on siding of the house,
Show me some cracked shingles and I'll write it up. I went to a house that was a $3 million house on Hudson River looking over at West Point that had 5 outbuildings, 3 garages. It was a huge estate. And this main beautiful house was all asbestos shingles. And the buyer from New York City, realtor was there, he was there, but the realtor came up to me and says, "You're writing this asbestos siding up, aren't you?" And I said, "No, I am not." She says, "But it's a health hazard." I said, "No, it's not." I said, "You find me one chipped," because I'd already been over it, and I had about 6 guys along with me, because this was too big an estate for one guy. And I don't like to work longer than 3 hours in a row, so I needed a lot of help. And we walked around that house. Were you on that job, Louis? No? I walked around and another guy walked around that house for probably 10 minutes trying to find one freaking shingle that I could call friable so I could at least get a contractor in there. Couldn't find one. So then the realtor wanted me to find a friable one and we had already tried and we couldn't. So she was pissed. Oh, I got paid, but they were not happy. They were expecting me to write that as an asbestos cement shingle. That was dangerous. And they were expecting to get a lot of money off on that house, so I wouldn't perform.
Now, how would you know that wasn't asbestos shingle?
You don't for a fact. There's a lot of shingles that could be asbestos, but the fact that it may be asbestos shingle gets me enough wiggle room to call somebody out to have that shingle tested.
Was it because it was older? Or?
No, it was just, there are shingles that the industry knows typically has asbestos, it's a cement. And the way it looks is this shingle, kind of wavy lines, kind of a concrete material.
Like a faux slate kind of thing?
Anybody want to make an effort at describing it better than I am? It's
I
kind
don't
of a covering on it. I don't know. And it's just like shingles, and they get nailed on. And in the nailing on, that's where the workmanship comes in. If they do a good job, they don't crack. And if they do a crappy job, they do crack. Now once you have cracked those shingles, now you have friable asbestos and you can write it up. But if it's not friable, you're done. And no, you're not done. It's a good job. But if you're looking for a defect, those cement asbestos shingles are not a defect unless they're cracked.
So in that report, you didn't mention them at all then?
Oh, I said the type of covering.
Oh, okay.
But I'm just not going to call it friable, because there was no friable edges.
So one cracked tile you would write,
One cracked tile, 2 cracked tiles, I would have written the building up. I need multiple. And I wouldn't have written the building up, I would say multiple tiles of friable, possibly multiple asbestos cement tiles were cracked. Possible asbestos construction, it could be asbestos, friable asbestos is dangerous to the health, recommend a qualified contractor make recommendations. I'm not saying replace it, I can't, but I am now have the ability to write it up, and then they can get a contractor that'll come out and say it all has to go off. I'm not doing it. 1, I point to 1 and I say that one's cracked. 2, I can now say multiple. And when I say multiple, now I'm getting a qualified contractor to come out and make recommendations about the covering. Okay? Does that answer?
thank you.
But you knew that already, right? What'd you do that you had asbestos experience?
Real estate transaction.
Okay. Good, and you used to run into that problem all the time? And did everybody else handle it that way?
Yes,
Okay, friable.
yes.
Okay, good. Surprised. Typically, if I could, well, you know, was that New York City realtor that wanted me to condemn the building just because it was made of that, is that unusual?
No,
No, most realtors are looking to find that kind of major just so that they can start negotiating the house again.
It's all about that green.
Right, so they want me to make it a major so they can get back to the negotiating table, and I wasn't going to please them.
Isn't it actually a good covering? for
It's the
house?
best there is, it's the best material there is.
Fireproof.
Asbestos is Canada, every road in Canada has asbestos into the mix because it lasts 10 times longer than anything else. It's the best fire retardant that there's known to man. It's the hardest material for being able to put into things to strengthen them. The list of benefits of asbestos are humongous. Canada still use, well, they're one of the major producers of asbestos in the world, I believe, aren't they?
Well, they still wrap their pipes on locomotives with it.
Michael, is asbestos illegal to use in America?
No,
What's it illegal?
when it's rival.
No. In America, what is it illegal to do with asbestos?
With throwing that.
What he meant was manufacture. You can't manufacture anything with, so it's against the law to manufacture anything in America with asbestos in it. So what do? We have it built in Canada and we ship it in. It's everywhere. It's in use more today than it was ever before. It's just we're getting it from offshore. We're not manufacturing it ourselves. We have we have factories in Canada, and that's a part of the NAFTA thing and everything else. We have factories in Canada that are manufacturing, and we ship it in, and we put together stuff with it. This wallpaper, I'm certain, is made of it. It's in 95% of all wallpaper because it's fire retardant and it's a good insulator. It's when it's in its friable state that it's dangerous. Thank you for that topic. That was great. Anything else? Anybody else? Vinyl windows? Anybody want to talk about vinyl windows? Why didn't I spend more time talking about the inspection of a window in this chapter? What?
Interior.
Yep, it's an interior item. Now, when I'm in the interior, now I'm looking at the window. Now I can judge the window. Now I can operate the window. Now I can test it. Now I can do everything I need to know. I can measure around it with the moisture meter, etc. So in the interior section, we'll talk about those vinyl windows throughout the house. Okay? Anybody, anything else?
Would windows being painted shut be a defect?
Could possibly be a egress issue.
I make it more of a comment, just need a mechanical agitation.
Oh, wait, no, wait, it wouldn't operate. That's an operational. Wouldn't operate. It's supposed to operate.
It's supposed to operate.
Well, I'm writing it up then. Good point. Painted shut is a defect, I guess. If I can't walk up, now, the representative number, I have to test one window in every room is what the standard of practice say. I walk up to a window, I look underneath the window, I'm looking for stains, moisture penetration. I unlock it, I open it, I close it, and I gotta do that one in every room. And if I can't do that, I'm writing it up. I'm gonna note it whether it's insulated panes, meaning 2 panes or 3, and what is its construction, wood or aluminum or vinyl or metal.
What about the window staying up?
What if it stayed up? Was it supposed to?
Well, I was gonna say, let's say when you have stash
If
doors
it
that are
doesn't
closed. So
operate
it goes up
properly,
and
I
releases.
write it up.
Okay.
Was it safe? No, because it could fall on me. Did it operate properly? No. And was it a pain in the ass? Oh, that's not what a pain in the ass means. Oh, sock, I'm sorry. Sock. Close
You're
enough.
thinking of SOPs when you wrote
Yes,
that.
thank you. Oh, you gave me a good excuse. Thank you. Was it in good condition? Well, probably. But it failed on 2 or 3. It wasn't safe because it could fall. And it didn't operate correctly. Remember, everything goes back to this. This is what we're looking for. That's what we call defects. We're writing defects up. So we're gonna write it up in such a manner that it doesn't confuse our client. That's a 1-sentence summary of this whole 4-month program. So you leave me your $1,900 and go home and we're all good.
What if
Joe
this-
doesn't have to show up next week, right, Joe?
I'll show up. I'll still be here.
Oh, you'll still be there? Yes, Louis?
What if the seal is broken and gas is leaked out, obviously?
The standards of practice say that we're not responsible for that, but I pointed out that the seals are broken.
Because it's obviously lost its insulating factor.
Yes. I pointed out if I can see gas, if I can see the moisture on the inside of it, it's supposed to be sealed, and it's not. Do I make a defect out of it? I kind of don't. I kind of just pointed out, I take a picture of the fogginess, unless you have a client. I had one client said, hey, of course, he had an indoors pool at this house, and it was on the grade level, and you walked into that, and it was the first room you walked into from that side of the house. And I walked in, and all the windows were steamy, and he was trying to convince me that that was the moisture. No, he was trying to convince me that the insulated windows seals were broken. And I'm trying to say that it's the humidity in the room, so.
The tough thing is when your client, I have a sliding glass door, and the client, the seal is broken, so there's condensation inside, and he says, this is definitely greater than, $1,500, because I need.
Well, if it was a Pella, it probably was.
Because I need a brand new, door and
Right.
everything, so I make it as a defect, because if I see one or more, it's gotta get repaired. Sometimes it could be 1,500, usually windows are like 3 or 4s.
Right.
So I point that out because it's visual.
Right. Anything else?
Do you,
Oh, he speaks.
you do, if you find, go to one room and say there's two windows, so you check one and you find a defect. Let's say it's painted shut or whatever, do you then check the other one as well?
Probably not. I want to check several windows. I don't want to just check one. Do I check one in every room all the time? Well, sometimes I can't get to windows because there's a bed in front of it, or whatever the story is, or a table, or whatever the story is. I check as many windows as I can, and once I hit 2 of anything, I know I'm writing it up, so what's the point of checking anything else? Finding a third working or not working doesn't change my report, because I'm going to write up the word multiple windows were not operating properly on the day of the inspection.
You inspect a house with asbestos shingles up, and they're cracked, and somebody has painted them over. Is that a way to seal the?
According to the EPA, painting over a cracked asbestos is not properly encapsulating. If you'd have taken tape and wrapped it, it would be okay.
I see people paint them all the time.
Yes. Anything else? Anybody else? Nothing? You guys ready to go home?
I have an unrelated question.
An unrelated home inspection question, or is this about the maintenance?
No, it's home inspection.
Go ahead.
Looking at the code of ethics, regarding the, representing, a relative.
Yes, immediate family.
So what is that? It's
We
like
went to an
sisters,
attorney.
family.
We went to an attorney and had that decided within, I'd say, 2 weeks of the time the law came out. Because a lot of us were concerned about that. Not me personally, but everybody I was hanging out with at the time was concerned about it. We had an attorney read through it, look through the original intent of the law when they wrote it, and what they decided was immediate family was immediate family. Father, son, sister, brother, mother. In-laws weren't.
We got Holy Ghost.
In-laws were not immediate family. So you have a brother-in-law, he is not a family interest. And if you have the wife, so if you're talking about, I did an inspection for my brother-in-law, you're okay. I did an inspection for my sister, you're not okay. They defined it, according to everything we could find at the time, as immediate nuclear family.
Okay.
Yeah, he said, what? The brother-in-law not, but the wife is, or the sister is.
I guess I missed that entirely, so I can't perform, my brother's gonna buy a house, I can't perform the home inspection for it.
No,
Conflict of interest.
you have everything to gain by your brother losing, being able to negotiate. So your inspection may not be impartial. You need a third party. Can I make some advice? The same advice I gave one of my students that Tom Callahan called me today about the same issue. His daughter's buying a house. And he says, I walked through it and I found two majors. So what do I do? And I said, well, you tell your daughter what the two majors are, and she walks to her realtor, calls her realtor up and says, I want the furnace looked at. She has every right to call out contractors. That's all we're doing, correct, Joe?
Absolutely.
So a client can call out a contractor. So he went through the house, he saw two things that were majors that he's concerned about for his daughter, and he calls me and says, what do I do? Do I have to get another inspector? I said, no. You explain what the defect is to your daughter, let her tell the realtor, and say she wants a contractor to come in and look at it. The contractor comes in, looks at it, deems it's a $3,000 repair, into the story. The clients are able to do that. So your brother, you do your inspection, and then he just says, I'm concerned about the furnace. There's no law that the home inspector is the only guy who gets to look at the house. I've gone to houses where the guy called out a dry basement guy because there were basement cracks and a roof guy. I was the third contractor there. The roof guy and the basement guy were already there, and I was doing the general inspection. Because the buyer was already concerned about the basement and the roof. Well, your brother can take your advice and call in his own specialist. And you don't even have to put pen to paper. That makes sense? Yep.
So not cousins?
Not cousins.
21 first cousins up here, so.
There you go.
Good I could do.
You from Tennessee? No. Where is it, family or? Oh, don't talk that way?
West by God.
Joe's going, don't, he may be from Tennessee, is that what you're saying?
We talking Allentown up here? Or?
21 first cousins?
My father's one of 9.
One of 9, that'll explain it.
Irish Catholic.
Oh, okay, got that.